In today's video, we are talking about 10 shiny objects from within N8N that, upon reflecting back, really limited my growth and slowed me down a bunch. I'm sure you're probably experiencing a couple of these as well. I wanted to cover these. With that being said, let's kind of dive into this. I would say like a shiny object is, to me, something that inevitably pulls me further away from my goal than actually getting me to where I want to be. So this is like more of a self-reflection on things that I wish I didn't do when I started with N8N. The first one is overly relying on AI agents over here. Okay, this is like one of the biggest buzzwords when it comes to AI and automation right now. And these are great. There's a role to be played in here, but that role is not in every single scenario that you build. And so let me give you an example here. We have an AI agent that receives a message from Telegram, and then we will essentially upload invoices or images. So it's like PDFs or images, and then we will extract the data and dump it into this Google Sheet. Now, the only issue with this is that we can literally build this whole thing just by removing this AI agent, because it's a glorified switch node. We're just saying, hey, is this processing PDF documents? If so, we send it down to the PDF path. If it's processing images, we send it down the image path. And this switch statement actually works a whole lot better. Here's the reason why. It's because AI agents are new, and decision-making could equal more mistakes. Imagine you're running a multi-million-dollar business, and 10% of the time things just go wrong, right? And then that means that you're on the hook for the money lost, and you're on the hook for actually having to go in and tweak it and repair it and all that kind of stuff. It can be quite a lot. So I think the general rule of thumb, at least this is what I tell my clients and the people in my community, is that if you can build a workflow easily without an AI agent, it's probably better to do it that way. So if you're just using it for like a glorified if or else statement or a switch statement, like you are in this case, you can just go ahead and remove it, and then remove that whatever percentage error rate because it makes the wrong decision or it doesn't understand your request properly. So a lot less flashy, but a lot more practical. Another use case for this would be like, if you can fully replace yourself from having to do anything, that's great. Let me explain this. This is probably actually one of the biggest things I see people use AI, where I see people use AI agents wrong. So in this example here, we're web scraping like literally Google Maps, Yellow Pages, Apollo, Instagram, and TikTok. We're messaging a model here, okay? We're getting the results, we're posting into this Google spreadsheet. The only problem is that you actually have to be retroactive here. You have to open up your phone, you have to log in, you have to send the message from Telegram and be like, hey, scrape the leads. And if you want to do this on a recurring basis, like once a day, and you forget 5 days, you're gonna be like, crap, I'm behind. You have to actually go in and it's just one task that you have to remember. If you have 100 or 1,000 tasks, now you have to do this 1,000 times. But you could just fully eliminate this AI agent and have a scheduler down here that runs every single day and then just goes down all the paths and scrapes the results and puts it into a Google spreadsheet just like this. And so rather than being retroactive with an AI agent, meaning you always are on the hook to message it, you could literally just remove yourself from having to do anything and just use a schedule down here and other tools like this. And this is honestly so common. I see this all the time in my school community. Next thing that I want to talk about here is a good use case scenario for an AI agent. Anytime there's thinking involved, okay, or there's an infinite amount of possibilities, an AI agent is a great tool. So let me give you a practical example here. Let's say that you have a bot here, somebody's chatting with it. There's a lot of different requests that you can make. It's good to have an AI agent here because there could be a lot of different things going on, and the order of operations might always change. And so this is great because the AI agent can decide, hey, go to this or go to that, or go from this back to that, or if there's an error, it can go back and fix things. If you're to build this out in like a workflow, this is kind of like the process that you'd end up with, which is obviously it's a nightmare. It would just be never ending. So in situations like this, it's fantastic to use an AI agent, specifically when there is reasoning or thinking involved in the decision-making process. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here is MCP. The world is literally going crazy over this. I hope I'm not the only person to say this online, but I'm going to speak my piece with this anyways. You can connect MCP servers into other apps like Claude, for example. So just taking a step back, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It's a way for AI agents to effectively communicate back and forth with each other. So for instance, I can send data from MCP and N8N over to Claude, and then Claude can send data from Claude back to MCP. The only problem with this is that this to me is like the exact same as just picking up your phone and having a different interface to communicate with that AI agent. I could use text messages through Twilio. I could use Telegram. I could use a chatbot. I could use Siri. I could be like, hey Siri, do this on my computer. I could use Gmails or my Gmail account. I could use my CRM, Slack, WhatsApp, and there's a lot of other things that we can connect in here too. And so this is just a different interface to do literally the exact same thing. And so for that reason, it's cool. It's just, to me, it's not like all that it's hyped up to be. And then with the MCP client tool over here, this is just a fancy way of sending data from N8N over to Claude. And a lot of the times it ends up causing errors over here too. But anyways, the problem with this is I see a lot of people using this to like send data from make.com to MCP over to Claude, and then back into a subnode to do things like book calendar events or search calendar events, when you can literally just do the same thing by calling a subnode. So this subnode thing here, right? If we add something in here, we add the subnode. This just allows us to do the exact same thing, just way more efficiently. Not always the exact same thing. Like if you want to process data in Claude, this subnode won't be able to do it. But if you're just using this to connect into a further subnode in N8N, this is definitely your best bet here. And so for that reason, a lot of the times it might not be exactly what you're looking for. Again, there are good use cases for this and AI agents and everything that I'm showing. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. Next thing that I want to talk about here is N8N pricing. So they did just release their newest pricing plans, and this is awesome. A lot of people will just move over to the community edition down here just because it is free, but this is a misnomer, and this is the third shiny object I want to talk about today, which is the fact that there's free community edition. So the reality is that one way or another you're paying for it. You're paying for it with your time, you're paying for it with your money. And typically speaking, most people I would reckon would probably want to pay for it with their money, because there's two ways to self-host N8N in the community edition. You can either do it in the cloud, which costs money, or the computer, which is totally free. And this is like Node.js, by the way, where you like software engineers will come in and they'll program. And so the issue is that if you do Node.js and whatever, all of a sudden you have to have a technical background and the uptime is uncertain. And this is the biggest thing, because anytime your Wi-Fi goes down, anytime your computer dies, anytime your server cuts or anything happens, if you're running mission critical operations inside N8N and this goes down, your business is offline, right? And so you need that uptime. And so whether you do cloud whether you do self-hosting in the cloud or whether you do it on the computer, you're still going to have to buy something to host your self-hosted computer app in the cloud. So you're not really escaping the price here. You're still going to have to pay for it either way. And the price is essentially going to be more or less the exact same. The only difference is cloud, you can set this up in 3 minutes. With the computer, you could set up in 3 minutes if you know what you're doing, but it also could take days or weeks if you're debugging and things hit the fan, right? So that's just the third thing I want to cover here. You could use something like Hostinger, which is what I personally use. You could do Railway, which is definitely the cheapest. And then you could do Alest, which is cool because it's like you pay per usage, but you actually end up paying up front. So I think it's actually more expensive than Hostinger when it's all said and done. Next thing I want to talk about here, which is kind of like a shiny object, and this took me years to figure this out, and nobody's guiltier than I am, I think, with this. But I always used to equate like complex workflows with good. Like this must be amazing. And so I always got super excited when things got advanced and sophisticated. The reality is, though, is as I've come to learn over time, is I really hate big workflows. I really, really don't like them because a lot of the times you can take a big workflow and condense it down. For example, this workflow here could literally be done in 3 steps. Not as sexy, not as shiny, but it's definitely better overall. Specifically, it's less fragile, it's more flexible, it's less redundant. No, you don't have to focus as much on maintenance. And when you're selling to clients, they're not really looking for the most complicated workflow. They're just looking for something that works because they're buying a benefit like winning back more time or money. And so I like to think about complexity like writing a really good first draft for an essay. It'll get you there, but it's like a brain dump, and then you should probably go and clean it up afterwards. All right, and the next thing we're going to talk about here is 3-in-1. It's first of all, shiny builds, shiny tools, and also being a perfectionist when it comes to building out N8N workflows. Now, I am first in line for doing all of these three things. I'm super, super guilty. But, take, for example, this workflow. I built it out. I was super excited because I was like, wow, this is super cool. I'm building out this AI agent that can do all these cool things. But, in hindsight, after building it, I reflected back on it and I realized, it doesn't actually give me the utility that I'm necessarily looking for. And so with that being said, it probably would have been a better use of my time to actually start focusing on building out things that really would have moved the needle rather than just getting carried away with things that I thought looked cool and looked sexy from the outside looking in. So for that reason, I want to give an analogy here. It's kind of like building a high rise and selling a high rise, right? So when you're building a high rise, the thing that sells is the thing that's sexy. And the thing that's sexy to me is like the interior design. It's things like the appliances. It's things like the furniture. It's when you look out the window and you're like, wow, I have this 360 panoramic view of the entire city. That stuff is what people want to buy into, right? And so it's really alluring to go into the shiny objects and be like, look, like this is where I should spend my time. But in reality, usually what's more important is focusing on the fundamentals or the foundations, right? And so when you take this analogy, for example, it's kind of like the concrete and the structure of that high rise, because ultimately speaking, you can have all these shiny objects, but if you don't have a good solid foundation to build all this furniture and appliances and all this stuff on, then it's not actually going to be all that effective in my opinion. And so what I'd rather do is spend my time building out those probably boring automations that actually move the needle, actually save me time, actually make me money. And the one caveat to this is like, if you're just having fun and you're building things and you just want to learn and all that kind of stuff, then of course it's great to be able to build whatever it is that interests you. The other thing that I want to point out here is same thing with shiny tools. There's a lot of cool tools being released all the time inside N8N, right? But the problem is that there's also a lot of tools that will just pull you away from ultimately getting you to where you want to be. You have a finite amount of time in every single day, and sometimes it might just be better to focus that time on high leverage activities that will actually go ahead and move the needle. And then the last thing that I want to talk about here is being a perfectionist. I've certainly been a perfectionist for many, many years. And yeah, like oftentimes, I'll spend 10 hours building out something that ultimately just saves me 2 minutes every single time I use it. And it's like no amount of using it will ever recuperate or recoup all of the time investment in it. So I've done countless scenarios. And so I always try and just evaluate, how much time is this going to save me, or how much money is this going to make me, or what's the impact before building it out. And if the ROI is not super high, I either will not do it, or I will try to do it in the quickest time horizon possible so that I can move on to things that actually will move the needle for me. The next thing that I want to talk about here that I think is a shiny object is not including humans in the loop. And so this is something I had to learn the hard way, and chances are it's probably for a lot of people watching this as well. So take, for example, building this particular blog post here, right? Looks pretty cool. We can generate this whole thing using artificial intelligence. This is actually all generated using AI, and I can link this down below, even the tables, everything. It's really cool. Now, the only problem with this is that I always get concerned personally when I publish things online that are fully generated by AI, because that particular post might not represent my brand. It might not be a good reflection on my reputation or whatever, right? And so I always am more conservative than anything else. And so while it's nice to be able to publish tons of content online, I want to make sure it represents me well. And so having a system like this, you can generate humans in the loop. So for instance, if I'm generating a blog post like this, I could go ahead in a Google Sheet. I could type in the keyword. I could click create here. It only creates if I'm happy with maybe the keyword or the description I provide. It goes ahead and generates a draft blog. Then I can go ahead, tweak it, have a human look at it, make sure it's good, publish that. And then when I'm ready to go, I can also create social media posts over here. We could even generate all the captions, images, all that kind of stuff, and make sure that when we're publishing this blog post, so we can of course generate the blog post, when we generate the social media post, we're happy with that as well, and we're publishing something that represents us well. Cool. Next thing that I want to talk about here is using Claude or other AI models to be able to generate fully functional N8N builds. Now, I think this is great, especially for beginners. This can get you like 30 to 70% of the way there. This technology is only going to get better over time. And so maybe in like a year from now or 2 years from now, who knows, maybe this is like 100% perfect. Just at the time of this recording, I find that a lot of the times this kind of stuff, it seemed cool to me. Just on reflection, after I started using it enough times, I realized I'm not actually saving all that much time. I typically find that, like most things in life, the first 80% takes 20% of your time. The last 20% takes 80% of your time. So this might get you a lot of the way there on the foundations, but a lot of the times that's the stuff that didn't even take me a lot of time in the first place. And so the other thing too worth mentioning is that this can take a long time to build. Sometimes there's errors, then you have to go back and debug those errors. And sometimes it's just easier to start from the ground up. So just one thing to keep in mind when kind of creating these workflows, and ultimately speaking, why I include this in the Shiny Object list is just because like this is not going to be 100% perfect. It's never a perfect solution. It can get you some of the way there, but at the time of this recording, at least, it's not 100%. Cool. Next thing here that I want to talk about is RAG. I actually love RAG. I think that this is fantastic. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. You can think about it like a chatbot, okay? Just like on your website over here, this particular website. So we have a chatbot, okay? Now what a RAG does, okay, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, is this chatbot can be connected into like a database on the back end, which is trained on all of your company's data. You can think about it like a glorified, like frequently asked questions post where somebody might ask, hey, what's the cost of your plumbing services? And then it will give you that FAQ question back. The average cost of our plumbing services is X, Y, and Z. So you can kind of upload all of your information into that database. You can train it on the history of your company. And when somebody asks questions, it will find the exact answer or the most similar answer possible. So maybe if they ask what's the cost of plumbing services, it might not have an exact answer, but it might be like, hey, you know, our range is between $100 to $200 an hour. So it'll pull back something as close to the answer as possible. Now, the reason I'm adding this in here is just because I do see a lot of people coming with questions to me asking, hey, can RAG do this? Can RAG do that? I think this is a wonderful piece of technology. It's just not a silver bullet for every type of functionality you want to have out there. And so for that reason, I put this on the Shiny Object list. Essentially, there are limitations to RAG, just like there are with every piece of software out there. And the way I like to think about it is like it cannot do major questions like summarizations, for example. So just a mini crash course. Let's say you have an ebook, okay? You upload an ebook into your RAG database, okay? What actually happens in the back end when you upload this document into your RAG system is this might be like, let's just say 100 pages, okay? And the RAG system doesn't operate at that scale. Like it needs to break that text into smaller pieces of like smaller chunks or smaller pieces of text. So it might break it down into like half a page each. So if you have 100 pages to begin with, then it's going to break it into 200 small sections. And the problem is that you might think, oh, well, just summarize chapter 3 over here, but chapter 3 is in like 17 different positions. So it has no idea what chapter 3 actually is. And so there's certain ways around it, but ultimately speaking, it's just not that good at essentially trying to summarize across an entire chapter just like this, or give the main highlights of chapter 3 in that same example, or give the number of times that a certain phrase was referenced, or referencing multiple scattered facts, or understanding document structure, or, you know, also one thing also worth mentioning is that whatever you put in, you get out. So if you don't put in good information, like if you have, back to the plumbing example, if your prices change every single year and you put in 5 years worth of pricing information, then it's just going to randomly pick one of those 5 prices out, and it's going to conflict every single time. So it might say pricing today, then 5 years ago, and you're just going to be saying different things to different clients, and that's no good as well. Cool. And so the last thing I want to talk about here on this Shiny Object list is voice AI calling through N8N. You can essentially hook up voice AI calling, be able to connect it into your Google Calendar to be able to book follow-up calls or whatever the case may be. And so I'll preface, the technology is good. It's only getting better. It's just that voice AI calling is not a complete replacement for human beings in every single way, shape, and form. A lot of people will come to me being like, can I remove myself fully using voice AI? And my recommendation is always, well, you probably could, but you probably shouldn't do that because you're probably going to lose money in the process of doing so. With that being said, let's kind of break this down just a bit here. It is of my experience at the time of this recording that there's sometimes latency. It doesn't always, like, latency just means that like there's a delay of like maybe some time in between responses. It doesn't always understand nuances. The biggest thing for me is rapport and trust. Like, I'm going to take the case of sales calls just because that's especially what I'd be thinking about doing this for, right? Replacing sales reps, all that kind of stuff. Voice AI is just, in my opinion, not going to build the trust or rapport required to close high ticket sales. And so with that being said, I wouldn't use it for that exact reason, because a human can build a deeper connection that will lead to more trust, which will lead to more conversions. Pronunciation, it doesn't always get things right. Sometimes it might be like when saying a number like bracket 604, bracket dash 212 or whatever. Edge cases, sometimes it goes off the rails. Sometimes it hallucinates. You can have guardrails on there, but even with guardrails, it doesn't work 100% of the time. Reputations, personally, if somebody called me with voice AI trying to sell me something, I'd hang up the phone immediately. If I found out that was voice AI, I would not be willing to, spend money, because that would just creep me out personally. And so for that reason, I feel like even just being pretty tech forward, I'm sure that a lot of other people would feel the same way. And so for that reason, maybe not the best reputation for your business. Conversion rates will probably go down, although I haven't tried this out yet. I know there's a lot of studies online which say, voice AI agents are 20x better or 5x better or 2x better or whatever. And they're usually from voice AI agents trying to push their own products on people. And so I think they're heavily biased when they say that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just kind of take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, it's not fully legal in every single particular circumstance. And then sometimes they can hallucinate as well. So in my opinion, you're probably better off just paying somebody who can actually close deals, and instead of trying to save money on a voice AI and tank your conversion rate. So cheaper doesn't always scale if it doesn't convert. Again, if you're doing customer service at scale and people are okay with talking to voice AI, then yeah, it could be a really good alternative. However, this is kind of how I'd break down the numbers. Let's say you get 100 qualified leads on sales calls. Each lead costs $50. Okay. Your total spend is $5,000 for leads for the month. Let's say you make $2,000 on sales. And this is just a generic example. Humans might have a 22% closing rate. This was the average closing rate for my 25-person sales team. $44,000 is what you'd make. You'd pay somebody, let's say $4,000. You'd make $35,000 in profit. Same kind of deal with voice AI, 4,500. You're making essentially 8 times more if you just stick with humans, because the opportunity cost of not closing the deals means that they're less profitable overall. And so sometimes saving that extra bit of money doesn't actually amount to you necessarily making more. And so for that reason, I just wanted to put it on here. Again, there could be some good use cases just specifically with sales, and anything with high pressure or whatever, where there has to be a certain result, I'd typically stick to a human. So thanks guys so much for watching. I hope you found value in this video. If you did, take a look at my school community where I teach people exactly how to learn these tools, first of all, and then how to apply them in 2 different ways. The first is how you can automate up to 80% of your existing business. And I give you the exact blueprints that I use to scale to 7 figures, as well as for those of you looking to build your own AI automation agency, I give you the exact roadmap that works very well for me. Thanks guys for watching. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.